Okay, so last time we did the external link and the internal link, so we talked about the distinction between those, and hopefully it's fairly clear. An external link is something that goes out to somewhere else on the internet, so you need the full HTTP or HTTPS prefix before the ://. Something that's inside your site just needs to point to the path where it is inside your site. So here, the old index.html file is at the root level of my project, so I don't need anything else in front of it. Keep in mind, if I had this in a folder, if I had it located somewhere else on the page, I might have to add, for example, the folder path, or in some cases you'll see something like this, which would be going up a folder structure. Those couple of dots and then the slash would be telling the website to go back up a little ways above this. In any case, this is my current site. I'm going to go back over to GitHub Desktop, say finished site example, and I'll commit it, I'll push it, and then once it's committed and pushed, I want to talk about the validator just for a quick minute. So the W3, the World Wide Web Consortium, operates a validator for HTML, XHTML pages, CSS style sheets, some other things like that. You can find it just with Google. Easiest way to do this, it's the W3C Markup Validation Service that you want to see here, and it's actually going to I'll dismiss that warning. What it'll do is this is the markup validation service for HTML, XHTML, etc. for web documentation. Later on, we're going to use the CSS validator that you can see over here to validate our CSS. We're not going to do that right now. We're just going to go through and do the HTML validator. Now, let's take a look at our code. What we're going to do, we can validate this by the document address that's online. We can validate it by file upload, which is uploading a whole file, which is kind of annoying, or just by direct input, which I find to be the simplest way to do this while you're working on the page. I'm going to grab my code over here in Atom, select all, and copy it. So if I were doing this with the menu, I would go to the edit menu, and I would go to, let's see, if I have it unselected, select all, and then I would go to copy here, and then go back over here to the validator and just go ahead and drop that code in. So Command V, or the paste tool, and then hit the check button. It's going to tell me that this was successfully checked as XHTML transitional, and it's going to give me one warning. And it's going to do this warning every single time I upload this by direct upload. And what the warning is that it says because you're using the direct input mode, they can't figure out what the character encoding is. It's going to be assumed here. So we'll talk about how to validate this on the actual HTML page here in a bit. So that validates, so that's pretty cool, but what does it look like when the page doesn't validate? Let's screw up some things here and we'll see what's going on with it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the alt text out of my image, because this is something that will mess with the validator. We'll select everything, copy again, paste it back into the validator, and hit check. And when we do that, we're going to see that we get an error and a warning. We get this nice little red bar to scare you up here. And when we scroll down, what we'll see is that this is the same warning we had previously that says we're using the direct input mode, so it's assuming UTF-8 character encoding. And then the error that we actually have, it tells us the line number and the column number actually, which is kind of nice, and it says required attribute alt not specified. Pretty easy. We can just fix this by adding the alt text back in here. Some other real common errors that you're going to run across in the validator. So to fix this, I would just create some alt text and give it some text in here. You wouldn't actually do this. I'm just doing this to make the example a little bit shorter. Something else that we can do is forget to close a tag. So let's take out that closing a tag, and we'll take a look at what that looks like over here in the validator. And again, I get an error and a warning, and the error this time is going to say something a little bit weird. It's going to say in tag for a omitted, but omit tag no was specified. This is kind of developer language for you're not supposed to omit tags, but you've omitted a tag here, so you need to fix that so it's not screwed up. And it's actually going to give you the kind of confusing thing here where it's going to say that the P tag is the problem. So a lot of people might pop over into their code and say, okay, but on line 19, I've got a closing P tag. What's going on? That's balanced up here. What you have to do when you get that error is to look up a little bit above it and say, oh, okay, maybe it's the image tag. Nope, that one's closed. Maybe it's the anchor tag. Yeah, that doesn't have a corresponding pair. It's not underlined here. The validator will tell you where that error is because it's seeing the error. It's reading it where the paragraph is closed, but it'll tell you where the actual starting tag was over here. So after the paragraph tag, this is where it's going to tell you it's starting. So you go up to line 17. You kind of read this from the bottom up. Go up to line 17 and see where that tag is starting, and then we can just add it back in down here or wherever we want to at the end of the page. page. So that's another example, just of something that might get a little bit screwed up. Something that happens sometimes with people is that you might forget to close. We talked about closing a tag before. You might have something that's out of order. So in other words, you might have a UL and then you might have an OL down below that's closed. So we could copy that, pop this back into the validator and take a look at it. And what we would see is if we had a tag that was emitted inside of another tag, you're going to get two errors actually at this point. So it's going to tell you that there's an end tag for a non-open element, so there's the OL tag. And then up here, it's going to say that the end tag for the UL was emitted, but omit tag no was specified. So again, it's going to say you're screwed up, you've got something screwed up here because you don't have your UL closed. And then you also have the end tag for element OL, which isn't actually open. So both of these things are messed up. So what we'll do is we'll start again from the bottom and start looking at line 20, column 3. Start tag is here, and look down from there. So if I go back over here, look in my code, I'll go to line 20 and say, okay, here's my UL. I can tell that it's not balanced because there's no underline. Look down at the next level. This is why this indenting is really kind of useful, and say, oh, whoops, I just messed up and I changed that to an OL instead of a UL. I can save that, fix it, and then everything will work well in the validator. One more video to come, and I'll show you how to upload this to GitHub Pages and actually publish it and then check it.